Hi there, my name is Sharon Rolph, and you're watching Pitfalls, the things that can trip us up when we are in transition. And I want to help you through those transitions. And I'm a retirement coach, but transitions happen to us unexpectedly or sometimes planned. But we're in a pandemic right now, and there are a lot of surprises in this season of change. So I have a master's degree in behavioral science and have been trained as a professional life coach and am certified as a knowledge manager. So you might be surprised that I'm 72 years old, but I'm going to be sharing some of the stories that have helped me through my transition into retirement. And I'm also want to share these little art blocks that give you a thought for the day. Daily do something that brings happiness, health, and wealth is one of my favorite. It's one of those things that helps us succeed in life. And I'll tell you more about that as we go along and just share some others. So, what I'm realizing about retirement is that there's a dark side, pitfalls that nobody seems to be talking about. And I know it's supposed to be the ideal season and have lots of new dreams, but the majority of retirement planning doesn't include the emotional, social, mental, and spiritual side of the transition into retirement. And hey, I may live another 30 years, and I don't want to waste that time by spinning my wheels or wondering what's my purpose here, because I don't think any of us die until our season here is done. So the AERP may send you a few tips, stories and maybe other people's stories, but they don't necessarily point out there's some consequences if you don't follow their advice. And I love bringing out the best in people, and I really want people to experience the ideal and be in love with life. And I'm more in love with life today than I was even 3 months ago, because I'm really embracing that, what makes me unique, and my contribution and value I can bring to the world. So as we look ahead into our retirement years, I want to help people find their focus and purpose for their next several decades. Perhaps you left your passion behind when you got a job, to buy a car, to have a family, to buy a house, and maybe the things that we were good at kind of have gotten dusty. Like maybe we're a fantastic piano player or a tennis player in high school, and what happened to that? So and when we especially leave our job behind, we might have forgotten who we are without a job. And here's another art piece I like to have you forgotten who you are just because you left your comfortable job or challenging job. This is a line I picked up from the Lion King movie. And when we didn't follow our first choice to become maybe an actor or artist or musician, because mom and dad wanted us to have something that you could make a living at. Well, in retirement, the time is yours. It's time to maybe renew your skill and talent in that particular area. And I'm finding more and more stories of people who left behind where their joy was in the singing or the art world. And as they're healing from things that have come in at them through their body and stress of life, they've picked up what brought them joy before, and it's helping them find a new purpose through the stress and the illness and help them heal. And I wish that for you too. So over the recent years, I've been able to connect some dots with, I like sewing. So this wall hanging on the back, I did that. And I love a color. Can you tell I love color? And I love sewing. I mean, words of wisdom. So this is one that I will probably see again in here, because seniors who socialize are happier. And actually that can apply to anybody. I'm an introvert, but I would be happier around more people, even if it's just a few quality people. And they are saying now that being isolated is the same effect on our body as if we were smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I don't want that for you or for anybody else. So maybe my fabric art and way of being creative stimulates an idea for inspiring you to be creative also. So why am I doing this? Well, I've had this strong conviction over the years of not wanting to stand before my maker and say, you know, some of that talent you gave me, I buried it. Wrong answer. I think actually our joy is connected to our purpose and our skills and talents. And let's dust those off and become aware of what we uniquely bring to this world. And the world is waiting for us, folks. So I'm particularly focused right now on helping boomers find their place to fit in, to matter, and to make a difference. And that could be anybody actually in transition that want to live from their inner sense of themselves, because then every day is a joy. So I'll tell you more about how I can help you do that. Let's desire the best in retirement and pursue it. Okay, let's flourish in this season. But let me say boldly that there are people who especially need to pay attention to this, and that would be singles, widowed, or divorced, or maybe former caregivers too. When don't have anybody else in our daily lives, the likelihood of family or friends coming along and say, Sharon, you know, you need to do something about being isolated, that may not happen. And if you've been in, and let me say, all of us will be single at some point before we pass on, most likely. And they're calling us that haven't had kids, and 18% of us haven't had kids. They're calling us solo agers. And this will make retirement vastly different from those who have kids and grandkids. I certainly really understand that. And then the other thing I want to say boldly is that those who have high demanding careers, tons of overtime, and no life outside of work, you are also particularly vulnerable to the challenges, pitfalls in retirement. So pay close attention. This may include pilots, people who have traveled a lot, or first responders. I drove for Lyft last year, and I was surprised at people who told me that they knew lots of people that are afraid to retire. And I'm here to help that. Maybe I want to help you live with gusto for the next 30 years. So at the end, I'll also tell you about a couple freebies that you can get from my website, so stay tuned. Okay, so after I retired and dealt with all that paperwork and insurance forms and so forth, what was left for me was empty walls and four walls and empty time. And it didn't take long for me to wonder, how do I know if I'd be effective or productive or, wasted my time? And just as I had retired from my job, I had started coaching school. And the first thing we learned to do was write our personal essence statement. The way that we perceive ourselves on the inside. And um, I started to read that 2, 3 times a day. It's on the top part of my wall hanging here. And when I lived from that essence statement, I felt every day was productive. It centered me. It kind of reminded me, who was I? And that inner sense of self always made me feel productive if I was starting from that point. So sometimes I'd read it 2, 3 times a day, and it gave me confidence and mental strength for each day. And I would like to help you write one too. So on the part that we're going to be covering today, the pitfalls, there's the social health that is a concern. I think, from my perspective, it's the biggest concern because there's so many people that aren't socially active and healthy. And it has that deteriorating effect on our health. We're going to talk about time freedom, the emotional health that comes with change, identity, self-management, and spiritual foundation. And so let's start with that social health. Are we in isolation or solitude? Now, I have to admit that I'm a introvert. And so way back in my 20s, I remember on a Friday night, I was crocheting a blanket. My aunt had taught me how to make a ripple afghan. And I was, it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I was sitting on my couch. And I thought, Sharon, you should be out there socializing. People my age were out socializing. And I thought, wait a minute, I like my company. I'm fine what I'm doing. Besides, I decided to be here. And that has always been a strong point in recognizing that loneliness wasn't a problem for me. I am desiring to be married these days, but I don't let it tell me who I am. So in that regard, I'm not feeling lonely. I just have a goal to move into another season of life myself. So, but is it isolation or is it solitude? And I want to encourage you, who do you know in your life that may not get out and be as socially engaged as they could or should? It seemed like my dad died because he started going downhill when he started feeling nobody needs me, or I'm in everybody's way, perhaps. So it created a depression, and the depression leads into declining health. So the solution to this, let's move on to that. I also wanted to mention that because so many of us may live to 100, we need to get a handle on this, because thanks to technology, scientific breakthroughs, we have more opportunities to be living longer. And again, I want to help people to be effective in contributing instead of a couch potato, because there's many things to solve and improve in our life. And being a good neighbor and somebody that has time to listen is a big contribution to our community. So let's get going on how to solve this problem. Well, realize that becoming more, improving our social health has a lot to do with our skills at communicating, and it may require us to do some changing, and don't be afraid to change here. Social planning will our planning a social life won't be a walk in the park. It'll feel awkward maybe sometimes, or uncomfortable for us extroverts especially, and understand that this is a process of change and be willing to change. No complaining here, because it gives you a better life, better health. So you might be somebody that prefers a large social circle or a few close friends. And I tend to be that few close friends. But and actually one of my ladies I lived with for a while, she impressed me of how often she was sitting down on a Friday or Saturday in her favorite chair and calling up people and checking on them. I think there was 4 or 5 people. If it wasn't every week, it was every other week. And she was so much better at that than I was. So we often can learn from people who are good at this. See? Use them to teach you how, okay? So there's people in the library, in the parks, in the clubs, classes. 40% of the people over 40 are seniors, college students. 10% of the college students are over 40. That's what I'm trying to say. Get a dog. Dogs help us keep social. Senior centers have activities and outings and meetups. Have you tried a meetup group? I started one actually. I was looking for retirement clients, but I soon found that their need for meeting people and being social was a bigger deal than my looking for clients. And so I kind of backed off a little bit from being totally focused on the transition into retirement with my meetup group. Things like the theater, a book club, there's events on Craigslist, events in your community. Even a Boys and Girls Club need adults to be friends to them, don't they? And how good are you at being a conversationalist? Let's spend time, I mentioned that already, with good people who are good at socializing. And they actually say people with a hobby are better communicators because they're creative. And maybe you could find a way to make your hobby social by either mentoring someone that would like to learn, or that you build a collaboration of people who are doing the same thing. Like maybe model train hobbyists, or I know a couple people that are in a walking club together. So, all right, let's learn the art of asking questions and leading a conversation. I have to admit, there's a couple people that's been in my life that you throw them the ball and they run with it for like an hour. Hey, it's supposed to be a two-way street. You know, if I'm always doing the listening, then I'm gonna start losing my focus on listening if you're doing all the talking. So asking questions like who, what, where, when, why, what do you think? Tell me what you mean by that, are good ways of engaging in conversation. And the art of listening, granted, is not something we're really taught, but like I said, it's not going to be a walk in the park, but you need to work at this, okay? I hope you give that serious thought, because I think it will pay off in great ways in your life. So the second pitfall is time freedom. Having 24/7 time freedom, even though that seems like you can play golf every day, after 10 years of golf every day, is it still satisfying? So let's talk about the structure of life. I posed this to my meetup group and was quite surprised at their answers. And some of that plays out in what I'm going to cover here. So they said the structure of life, say on a daily basis, you always have your meals and breaks that you need to take. Having exercise or movement is a good thing to do every day. There's the everyday chores and maybe emails that need to be addressed probably, and scheduling time or having time with one-on-one with relationships, maybe grandkids or whatever, neighbor kids. So they recommend that we establish a routine and try it out for a month or a couple weeks, and if it doesn't work, modify it and get your routine so that it works for you. Feel free to change it. So what I found the answers from my meetup group was they would plan their day around maybe when they need to take their medicine, or when they need to go shopping, or when their favorite TV program is on. I know there's one or two that I like to watch every day. So realize that in your time, that all this 24/7 that you have, you also need to have plans for your doctor visits and your medical tests, and there's birthdays and anniversaries and so forth that come up. And putting that into our calendar, our routine, is a really good thing. Now, you could use a list, a task list for things that are kind of maybe related to a project, and it's more maybe details that are like today or this week. But a calendar is where you want to put all those due dates and times and anniversaries, where you can get a picture, a better picture of the big picture. And they can say that a calendar is a great place to keep all your notes of the where, when, what, and who, and maybe even the why. You know, like if it's going to be a wedding and you need to plan ahead for maybe getting a gift or a card, and getting there and things like that. So if you put it all in one place on a calendar, you're not having to scramble all over the house. So like, where did I leave that address, or where did I leave the time? You know, it's going to be organized, and a calendar is a great tool to keep us organized and maximize our time efficiency. And if you're somebody who kind of forgets to schedule those important things, like if you're working on leaving a legacy, like a story, or my dad had always wanted to make a grandfather clock. Well, that might be a pretty big project, but if you schedule time on your calendar for what's important to you, you'll be glad you did. All right. Realize too that there are things that are seasonal, like gardening and raking leaves, and getting ready for winter. That might be something you want to include on your calendar too. And one more tip for the task list is to write the verb, the task, and the goal. Like this example, somebody wanted to learn to play the guitar, so call Joe to schedule a new lesson, would be their what the action is and what the task is. So some good reasons are good ways to use time freedom and feel like it's structured now, since nobody's getting you up and getting you out to work. All right, emotional health is the next pitfall. This is a change in transition is a huge emotional challenge to our stress level and our health. And you've probably seen this list of things that create stress, a stress inventory. And I highlighted here the things that might pertain to retirement, beings that illness or injury could figure into the picture, or changing your residence. But retirement itself is pretty high on this list too. So that seems in our day and age to be the natural thing of change creating stress. And it's a time when you need to consider being gentle with yourself, and remember what your favorite way self-care is. Maybe it's a bubble bath, maybe it's taking a run, maybe it's binge watching TV. But when your stress level is high, you need to be gentle with yourself. Now, when I was in the corporate world, I sometimes took some training on change management. And if you're starting out at this level that you know you need change, and then you try to implement something new, it always gets worse before it gets better. And just realize there's inevitably a confusion during the change process, because after all, you're having to learn something new. And in retirement, let's take the opportunity to look at retirement as a new chapter. And that's where this level of curiosity kind of comes in, because I think curiosity keeps us young. You could retire to your passions, or retire to being a grandma or grandpa. But that's how you look at this transition in a hopeful kind of way. Connect to others. And they saying that keep your old friends and look for finding new friends in retirement. So, and another way they mean this, to connect to others, is to realize when you connect with others, even if it's a stranger, and you discover they're having the same experience or similar to yours, you realize you're not alone, and that is a nice feeling. When I started planning for my retirement, I made a point to meet with one of my local friends here for a light dinner, and several times, and I asked her what was involved with her retirement. She had become a widow. I don't know where that happened in relation to her retirement, but it was so neat to see her share how delighted she was to become a music therapist in preschool and first grade classes at a local school, and how that added so much meaning to her life. So let's see. You might, when you're in a transition or in retirement, there becomes a need to change how you define productivity. So maybe you're doing more, especially in this pandemic, you're probably doing more things around the house or in the house than you had time before. So your productivity is how much progress did you make in the house or in your garden. I think growing a garden is great therapy. And so if you're not being able to work now, then your definition of being productive is definitely going to be different. And just acknowledge that and change it for this season. And let's see, I mentioned getting with a role model to inspire you through this transition. And I still meet with my friend, not as often, but at least 2-3 times a year. In fact, she sent me home last week with some chicken soup. All right. Now, for you control freaks, change and transitions might really set you for a spin. And I want you to recognize that there's things you can control, things you can't control, and things that you can only control somewhat. Like controlling other people may be something you control somewhat, but you can't control the weather. And just put your stress into these different categories. Or there's also the another way to kind of help get organized around the changes that are happening is that they say there's 8 areas of life that we can evaluate through this little table here. 8 areas are home, relationships, health, personal, learning, finances, work, and workplace. And then you put an X on whether it's a minor change, some change, a lot of change, or major change. And they recommend that you only focus your energy on one area of your life at a time. And once you've created stability in that one area, then you move on. You're planning to a different area. I think that will help us all feel more focused on what really matters right now. And after all, part of time management is focusing on the most important thing at a time, or for each day. So identity is our next pitfall. When you've left your job, it's easy to wonder, well, who am I now without my business card or without my title or a task to do, a team to work with, and nobody to collaborate and socialize with at work anymore. Again, we have to refocus or redefine our identity now. What an opportunity. Maybe you're going to be the ideal uncle or be the next gardener of the year. So when we acknowledge our transition, just like acknowledging change, it helps us mentally. I don't know why, but it's like we're facing the honest truth. And it will strengthen our self-image and restore our confidence. And with a renewed sense of self and your contribution to society, it helps you to see yourself as acceptable. Identity to me is a need to repurpose our skills and talent. And we'll talk about that some more. So however, you may be facing some identity crisis. Questioning your role in society is one of the symptoms. Searching for more meaning, reason, or passion for life, to continue on. Questioning your values, spirituality, beliefs, and interests are all part of an identity crisis. So handling identity crisis, the recommendation is that we look inward and explore. I don't think we do enough reflection in our life. It helps us see the good and the bad of what has happened and maybe help us make choices of how to proceed. But reflect on your interests, passions, and hobbies when you are reconstructing who you are now. And what grounds you? What makes you happy or gives you joy? Have you forgotten what is fulfilling to you? I think sometimes that music is grounding for people. Or in retirement, I think half my job is helping people remember what makes them happy and gives them joy. And it's even been hard for me. So one time I came back from being out of town for a few days, and the first 10 minutes I was home, I was out watering my plants on my patio, and I like raising my flowers and my plants. So that makes me happy, Sharon, So sometimes we have to get kind of conscious instead of doing it mindlessly. So, how to rebuild your identity of who you are is you can help have your get some help from your family and friends, church or community, or even re-engaging with some sport teams if you've done that before, and stop comparing yourself to other people. All comparing is internal and external judgment. I have come the last 6 months to really focus on how I was judging myself. And I've never been that much concerned about comparing myself to others, but it seems like everybody, over the years is comparing yourself to what other people can or can't do. But what really matters is, are we doing our best? And that has stopped a lot of this, if I'm doing my best, then shut up, all that judging thoughts that come when we are questioning who we are. And realize that if you've been in a high achiever career, have an intensely competitive job, or worked a lot of overtime, the likelihood of you having a support team around you, or being able to define yourself without a job, there can be a huge mental and emotional health risk here. And if that identifies you, then be willing and able to ask for help. Because high achievers and intense competitiveness and lots of overtime, kind of the room for people that, you know who you are by either the mirror or people who are mirrors for us and telling us who we are. So if you haven't had that, recognize that there's a health risk here, and please be willing to ask for help. All right, self-management is another pitfall. And what I mean by this is there's nobody telling you when to get out of bed and when to be where, for your job and so forth, or when to catch that plane. And you are the director of your life now. And the statement by Dale Carnegie I love because it kind of reminds me of becoming a 3-year-old again. We rarely get tired when we are doing something interesting and exciting. So if our days and our calendars are filled with something interesting and exciting, our energy level will be much higher. And decide even before you get out of bed in the morning, maybe, what's the most important thing to do today? I've started doing that, and it helps me think about having a successful day, whatever I need to be doing. But I found some interesting research here on how do we help maintain or replenish our energy. They're saying that energy is the lifeblood of our daily decisions and actions. Now, we don't often think about what's energy depleting habits, characteristics, or activities. But on the other hand, there's energy enhancing habits too, characteristics and activities. So energy depleting habits are worrying and being fearful and feeling guilty or resentful or sad. And, if you're going around walking with your head down all the time, that's not energy enhancing habit. So by the same token, energy enhancing habits are, when you're kind of like reaching for the sky, having hope, having fresh water, having supplements, and hopefulness, positivity. and creativity are characteristics and habits that promote greater sense of fulfillment and well-being. This Adam Susinski has something called the founder of IQ Matrix. He had a lot of good things to say, and I only included a couple here, but I have his website down here for where you can get more of his material. Laughter and being social enhances mental alertness and energy. We're often thinking about how can we enhance our mental alertness, and I certainly could use more laughter in my life. Maybe I need to have one of those things that pop up on my phone every day that gives me a laugh. That could help, wouldn't it? But there is that being social is being an enhancement of life, and positive people and friends are energy builders. Were you aware of that? Hey, one time I was not sure I was feeling quite up to my walk that particular day. And I thought, well, it seems like whenever I swing my arms, that helps reset my system. And maybe I'll go a couple of blocks and see how it goes. And then I went down. It turned out that I ran into my friend Barbara and talked with her a bit. And when I got home, I thought, wow, I feel so much better. I'm so glad I did my walk, because actually talking to my friend helped make it a better day. So that could be something you become aware of as being energy enhancement too. Some more things about having energy enhancements in our life is having values, and values are defined as person's principles or standard of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. And when we're living closely to our values, it creates a feeling of living in integrity. I don't think we realize the importance of values. And when I was doing my What Do I Want to Do in Retirement workshops, I had a list of 50 values that I had people look over and determine which ones were important to them, and then try to get it compressed down to just top 5. And have you reflected on what your values are? Because when you're living in alignment with your values, it is greatly enhancing. And let me just say, sometimes we take jobs, especially us boomers over the years, it didn't matter what your company's values were, you needed to have a job. Well, today's young people are asking what are the company values, because they want both to live by the value at home and at work while they're performing a valuable service. So we need all the more reason to get back in touch with our own personal values when it wasn't afforded to us in our careers, perhaps. Another energy enhancing thing that helps us with life is being thankful. And it just may be the secret to happiness. You've heard Oprah maybe and other big people who have achieved a lot. That turnaround in their life happened because they were thankful, or when they became thankful. So I found a couple of short videos online by Robert Emmons, and he has a book called Thanks. And I haven't read it, but it looked like something I'd like to read, and I recommend that to you too. So some ideas, a way to cultivate gratitude is writing a thank you note, even thanking someone mentally, counting your blessings, keeping a gratitude journal, pray, and meditate. And I want to leave you with one more energy enhancing thing, and that's curiosity. Let's see, I have a little art block for that, and it's explore the possibilities. When you're exploring and curious, it does amazing things. And it could be that there's people in your life that might rub you the wrong way. Well, how could you ask a curious question of that person that helps you understand where they're coming from and maybe start building a bridge towards them with your curiosity? Because um, life is often reciprocal, and maybe they'll start asking questions about you too. But it helps that whole understanding of where people are coming from. But curiosity is something that we need to nurture. So give that a try. Okay, the last segment, a pitfall that we're going to cover today is a spiritual help. And I'm just so appreciative that more people are talking about their spirit and their soul. And I think values kind of helps bring that into workplaces too. But self-love and acceptance are the foundations upon which a powerful life is built. And oftentimes, even in our jobs, if we became defensive, it might be because we weren't feeling accepted or that people were challenging our worth. But if we didn't have a foundation from self-love and acceptance from our family, growing up, then we may need to work on that now. I know one of my friends, their their job included that they had to read a book on self-love on an annual basis. Their company felt that strongly about their taking care of themselves and having the right mindset about them personally. So spirituality is defined from a positive psychology perspective as a deep sense of belonging, of wholeness, of connectedness, and an opening to the infinite. And people with a spiritual help, they have hopefulness, compassion, and understanding. They may very well have a sense of purpose and meaning. And inspiration and appreciation is part of who they are, and peace of mind. So much value in having that perspective. You often it can maybe recall TV stories of people who've had atrocities happen to them, and yet they have been able to either forgive the perpetrator or handle it with ease instead of drama, and be centered in a way that the perpetrator probably can't understand. But spiritual people are seen as gracious, compassionate, flourishing people. They self-actualize and take time to savor life's simple pleasures. So I found this great list from Brene Brown on guideposts for wholehearted living. And she's a doctorate in social work and has a significant research in how do people live when they're wholehearted. And I want that for everybody. So her list is: cultivate authenticity, let go of what people think. And it seems like more and more it's like people aren't thinking about you, they're only thinking about themselves. So let go of it. That's a waste of time. Cultivate self-compassion. Let go of having to be perfect. There's not very many things in this world that are perfect. And so be gentle with yourself. Cultivate a resilient spirit by letting go of numbing and powerlessness. You often become numb when you stuff your emotions and don't express them. They somehow get hidden in our body instead of being expressed. So give yourself the power to express your emotions. Gratitude and joy is one of her guideposts, and let go of scarcity and fear of the dark. that is a huge, to have the attitude that there's more than enough to go around. And well, I guess that's more of abundance. But scarcity, when the sun grows all kinds of plants and flowers and trees and weeds, um, and they grow without any, often without any of our effort, then there's they're a natural gift to us, how the sun grows things. Cultivate intuition and trusting faith. And you've heard the term the leap of faith, and I believe strongly in that. So let go of the need for certainty. The need for certainty, I sometimes think about a cloud, and ambiguity is often, to me, I see it as a cloud. And I will take steps forward even if things feel ambiguous. And little by little, there'll start being some form to that cloud, and we'll have more details of what we're dealing with, and it's going to be okay. All right, cultivate creativity. Let go of comparison, like we mentioned before. Cultivate play and rest. Let go of exhaustion as being a status symbol, and being productive as a part of your self-worth. Rest and play are highly valued. Cultivate calm and stillness. Let go of anxiety as a lifestyle. Drama doesn't give us wholehearted living, folks. Cultivate meaningful work. Let go of self-doubt and supposed tos. Meaningful work is your level of judgment, not anybody else's. Cultivate laughter and song and dance. Let go of being cool and always in control. I think that is such a great list. So we've covered these 6 topics here. We covered social health and beating back isolation that will positively impact our health and our relationships. Next time you are considering or what next step will you consider to be social? Will you find a meetup group or find some activity that you can connect with people, and maybe even watch out a little bit for your neighbors who seem to be isolated and not as social as what would be conducive to their health. When you look at your structure of time freedom, especially once you become a widow or empty nester, it's you who makes the scheduling of all of your activities. So don't wait for somebody to pull on your shirt and say, let's go do something. Do that for yourself. What's important on a daily basis now is, your chores and your meals and your meds and your TV shows. Remember, there's annual and seasonal things to include on your calendar as well, and wellness checks, hearing and eye exams too. Emotional health. Realize change is not always scary. How can you make a game of it? Figure out the pros and cons of each change and anticipate unexpected bonuses. I love doing that. When I was in driving for Lyft, I often looked for those unexpected bonuses of the people I'd meet who ride in my car. Who are you now? Imagine going to your next costume party, having discovered your new identity. Are you a painter, an author, a gardener, a volunteer of the year? Now that you're the director of you, what have you found that gets you dreaming again? Gets you out of bed in the morning, out of the house? Have you set some new goals about leaving a legacy or fixing a problem that's way overdue? C.S. Lewis says you're never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. And that's good for I think keeping ourselves with dreams is a way to stay young, actually. And spiritual health. Have you What have you found a way to live your values in the most perfect way, where you fit in, make a difference, and matters in your soul and your spirit? So again, I want to remind you, what makes you happy? That's worthy of considering for even the next year. All right. One thing I also want to mention, tell you about is um, the Peace Corps was started back in our young 20 years. And my friend Paul Long wrote a documentary, and it's on Vimeo, on how the Peace Corps started. And for those of you that might be in a transition, I want you to consider uh, reviewing his documentary, A Passing of this Torch, and consider possibly doing a new stint, finding a new way to contribute in the Peace Corps. You're going to, it's going to be a new social experience, a new spiritual, tapping into your spiritual health, your emotional health. It's going to be a powerful experience. And I want to challenge, in fact, I forgot to mention, I see the day when we're going to see billboards that say, boomers, what are you doing to come alongside your favorite charity or foundation? And the Peace Corps might be a start to that for you. So I just want to end by telling you that I am a retirement coach, and I love helping you reconnect to your passion that you once had, to find a place to fit in, to matter, and to make a difference. And the having your unique purpose and meaning in life is important to me, that because I think that's what's going to fill our next 30 years. So I have a Bloomer Blues assessment, a longevity blueprint video that talks about writing your own sense of yourself, and an effortless vitality plan. And you can reach me at Sharon at effortlessvitality.org. And when you go to my website, effortlessvitality.org, there is a freebie there that you can get when you sign up for following my work. And it will give you some similar questions to what I'm posing here. And on YouTube, you'll find that my channel, Sharon Rolph, has vlogs and podcast videos. I ran 25 shows on Fresh Courage podcasts. I also have on my website a former podcast that was only audio called Maximize Retirement that you might like to listen to too. I interviewed people, and these people are helping to show us the way on being successful in retirement. So I believe I might have mentioned my essence statement, and let me close by sharing my story of how something that made a big impact on me. I was living in Dallas for 12 years, and on the first weekend in May, they have a May Fest or May Fair. I'm not sure what the title is, but the day I went, I found a booth way back at the far corner of a geometry teacher turned jewelry maker. And when I tried on his jewelry designs, on rings, and I was just amazed at how unique this was. And things stirred in my gut when I had these rings on my hands. I was so shocked at what was happening with this beautiful jewelry. And I went on to use that experience to describe how I contributed at work. I talked about its value, its color, its durability, its radiance, the sparkle, and being distinctive and unique. And so I used that to describe how I was in my teamwork at work. Well, then I went on to use that also when I created my essence statement, or what I'm also calling longevity blueprint. And it goes like this: I am precious jewel of wisdom. I am colorful collaborator, motivator, and learner. I am tranquil, authentic, and pure inspirer. I light fires. I hope I've helped light a fire in you, in fact. And you can find links on my website to how I can help you write your own essence statement. And I hope you're interested in that. And thank you for viewing this Pitfalls of Life today. Thanks for joining me.